Welcome back to our channel, where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news: King Charles makes a shocking move after Camilla's betrayal exposed by Prince William's investigation. An insider source has said that King Charles has taken decisive action against Camilla after Prince William's inquiry into her clandestine life, which revealed a startling betrayal during King Charles's medical treatment last year. The startling revelation from Prince William's investigation that astonished Charles and the royal family. In this video, we will explore King Charles's actions toward Camilla. In the sacred silent hallways of Buckingham Palace, where the weight of 1,000 years of history descends on every gleaming surface, a crisis of unimaginable size is purportedly emerging. Whispers that started in the hushed back rooms of Westminster have now burst into a political and personal inferno, threatening not just the reign of King Charles III, but the entire stability of the modern British monarchy. According to various sources close to the royal household, a catastrophic collapse in the marriage of King Charles and Queen Camilla has culminated in a scenario previously believed unimaginable: the signing of divorce papers. The action, apparently instigated by a king left grieving by what sources describe as a deep and personal betrayal, has sent shockwaves through the royal family, leaving senior members astonished and split about the potentially disastrous impact. What was once lauded as one of history's great royal love stories, a connection that withstood public derision, family hostility, and decades of waiting in the wings, is now claimed to be destroyed. In its place, a silent but ruthless fight is emerging, one that sets a wounded monarch against a queen who, armed with the institution's most sensitive secrets, is apparently reluctant to leave peacefully. As the palace scrambles to preserve a facade of unity, the growing drama presents the greatest severe challenge to the crown since the stormy days of the 1990s. The king has made a terrible decision, one that will decide not just Camilla's destiny, but the whole form of the kingdom he inherited. The spark rumors and a gathering storm. The root of the situation, insiders believe, can be linked to a series of poisonous falsehoods that started spreading in late October. It began not as a flood, but as a toxic whisper born on the winds of London's political and media elite. The rumor was of an alleged indiscretion on the part of Queen Camilla, an involvement with a prominent and important leader whose name remains a tightly kept secret, but is characterized as a person with great international status. Initially, the palace press staff dismissed the buzz as false rumor, the type of nasty conjecture that has always been a fixture of royal life. King Charles, a man who has spent his whole life under the lens of public opinion, is believed to have originally shrugged off the claims. He has seen rumors rise and fall like the tide, a senior courtier commented. His inclination is consistently to endure adversity, to have faith in the fortitude of the crown. Nonetheless, this experience seemed distinct. The rumors extended beyond the confines of international tabloids. They originated from the confidential sessions of Parliament, were suggested in the articles of renowned broadsheet journalists, and were purportedly used by political opponents seeking to uncover a vulnerability in the monarchy's robust defenses. The critical juncture allegedly occurred with the release of an article in a prominent European magazine. Although it did not specify any individual, its intricate language vividly depicted a top royal person engaged in an intimate private affair among the subdued illumination of a continental event. The particulars were sufficiently precise to be incriminating, and the implication was unmistakable. It directly implicated Queen Camilla. In his private study at Clarence House, among books and the polished mahogany of his desk, King Charles reportedly read the paper in quiet. For a monarch who had endured considerable sacrifice for Camilla, shielding her from public scorn, familial disapproval, and the specter of his initial marriage, the remarks were characterized by an aid as blades reopening old wounds. His hands, frequently exhibiting a subtle tremor, allegedly clenched the pages, a facade of regal composure, scarcely masking profound and visceral anguish. A close friend of the king said, "He need no formal validation." The pattern, timing, and form of the innuendo connected with a history he has tried to transcend. Charles has never really neglected the art of vigilance. His first official move was to Zhao Huan his most loyal and long-serving private secretary, Sir Edward Young. In a meeting characterized as solemn as a funeral toll, Sir Edward conveyed to the king the stark truth. "Your Majesty, we cannot not disregard this," he reportedly said. "The narratives are proliferating rapidly and are starting to influence public opinion." Charles, with a glance characterized as glacial but encumbered, provided a terse and resolute reply. "I am indifferent to gossip, Edward. I want to hear it from her." His tone was measured, although behind the surface a storm of uncertainty was gathering. Could Camilla, the woman he had raised to the pinnacle of power, the foundation of his subsequent existence, have deceived him? The illusion of composure and the expanding divide. As the king grappled with his doubts, Queen Camilla executed a faultless public demeanor. During an afternoon tea for a military charity, she epitomized calm. Her golden hair was flawlessly styled, her sapphire silk dress fell gracefully, and her composed smile revealed no indication of the anxiety that was starting to infiltrate the palace. Nevertheless, she sensed the atmosphere changing. The smiles of the ladies-in-waiting were insincere, while the gazes of the courtiers were calculated and critical. Every conversation resembled an indictment veiled in the stifling decorum of royal formality. When Lady Margaret Lansdowne, a reliable friend and confidant, leaned in to whisper, "Camilla, have you heard the rumors?" The Queen's reply was refined and disdainful. "Margaret, gossip is the leisure activity of the indolent," she allegedly said with a rehearsed grin. "It will diminish shortly." However, when she averted her gaze, an onlooker saw her hand quiver the fragile porcelain of her teacup, quietly clattering in its saucer. She understood more than anybody that in the realm of crowns and authority, a rumor is never just gossip. It is a weapon, and its keen edge was now brushing against her neck. The increasing estrangement between the king and queen became vividly evident during their private interactions. That evening, in their exclusive dining room at Clarence House, the soft illumination of candles danced along the family pictures adorning the walls, but the atmosphere between them was acrid and stagnant. Charles, striving to preserve an appearance of normality, often directed his attention towards his wife. Each movement of her wrist and every diverted gaze transformed into a wordless, haunting inquiry. Ultimately, he broke the oppressive silence. "Camilla," he said, his tone profound and measured, "is there anything you want to disclose to me?" Camilla paused, her lips forming a subtle, rehearsed grin that failed to illuminate her eyes. "Charles, you consistently indulge in excessive imagination," she said, her tone airy. "It is only trivial gossip." However, a glimmer of deep disquiet, a subtle, almost indiscernible crack in her well-crafted facade, revealed her true feelings. Charles observed it. Silently, he set down his silver utensils, rose from the table, and left the room, leaving her solitary among the flickering candles and the pictures of monarchs who had endured their own treacheries. As the substantial oak door shut behind him, Camilla stood still, her gaze ensnared in the darkness. She understood that the murmuring tempest would not dissipate. It had reawakened the profound wounds in Charles's heart, and perhaps elicited secrets she believed were eternally concealed. The inquiry and the point of no return. Subsequent days transformed Buckingham Palace into a bastion of distrust. Charles, a king who had esteemed his fortitude, saw his determination wane. Each utterance from Camilla and every public engagement she undertook was scrutinized through the prism of his skepticism. The affection that was once his refuge had soured into a cause of perpetual distress, its remnants poised to spark a conflagration that might engulf his whole existence. Tormented by the specters of previous betrayals, both public and private, the king became engulfed by a need for certainty. Confidential reports began arriving on his desk every morning. An anonymous letter with unknown sources enumerated a series of Camilla's discreet, unauthorized contacts. A blurry image acquired by a private investigator showed her at a poorly illuminated banquet, engaged in intimate discussion with a guy who was not part of their formal entourage. He reportedly said to himself, "I need the truth," his voice resonating in the expansive, vacant room. He called Sir Edward and issued a directive that initiated a perilous sequence of events, a clandestine investigation of the Queen's actions. This information must not be disclosed to anybody outside the king, ordered, his tone resolute. Ascertain every information. Where she has gone, whom she has encountered, and for what reason. Sir Edward, a man well versed in the intricate dynamics of the monarchy, inclined his head slightly, a flicker of profound apprehension passing over his visage. He understood that once the machinery of official suspicion is set in motion, it seldom ceases without inflicting irreversible harm. The breaking point occurred over an exclusive dinner designated for the royal family's closest associates. The ambiance in the intimate dining hall, where ruby-red wine shimmered in crystal goblets, was laden with unarticulated tension. Camilla, adorned in elegant black silk, radiated royal poise, while a frenetic energy lurked under the surface. After her third and fourth glass of wine, a blush appeared on her cheeks, her voice became more loud, and her laughing becoming more brittle. She was embodying the character of the untouchable queen. Nevertheless, internally, the burden of Charles's distrust and the incessant demands of her position were exacting a toll. Charles sat almost still at the head of the table, his wine glass unconsumed. His stare embodying the vigilance of a hunter and the sadness of a lover remained fixed on her. A delicate aspect of him continued to harbor the hope that this was only a grave misinterpretation. However, with every laugh that excluded him and each gaze that evaded him, that optimism disintegrated more into oblivion. Upon the visitor's departure, leaving just Charles, Camilla, and a few remaining staffers, the stillness in the room grew oppressive. Unsteady, Camilla rose her wine glass, tipping and dropping red droplets onto the precious Persian rug, a stain emblematic of the evening's ruin. She faced Charles, her eyes aflame with a powerful blend of defiance, anguish, and intoxication. "Charles," she said, her voice quavering, but resolute, "you see me as if I were guilty of a significant offense. What do you believe I have accomplished? Have I betrayed you?" Charles tensed his hand, gripping the arm of his chair with such intensity that his knuckles became pale. "Camilla," he said, his tone subdued and incisive, "I want nothing but the truth. Could you provide it to me?" The remaining assistants lowered their heads, perceiving the atmosphere had become tense, like to a wire on the verge of breaking. Camilla emitted a shrill, brittle laugh that was both mocking and despairing. She advanced toward him, her heels striking the marble floor with a crisp, intentional cadence. The veracity. She repeated, her voice ascending with intense, visceral intensity. "The reality, Charles, is that I never harbored affection for you, not in the manner you adored me." The words struck the hushed room with the impact of a physical blow. Charles experienced a constriction in his chest. His eyes, previously focused in skepticism, opened in sheer, unfiltered astonishment. This was hardly the admission he had been after. This was far more catastrophic. In that one wine-infused instant, 3 decades of collective history sacrifice and a love he saw as the pinnacle of his existence disintegrated into ashes. "Camilla." He exhaled, his voice fragmented, striving for something that had already gone. She shook her head, a glimmer of remorse in her eyes before it was replaced by deep fatigue. "I am fatigued, Charles," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Exhausted by being in your shadow, weary of the crown's dominance, exhausted from feigning." She then turned and departed, her feet wavering slightly as she vanished down the long hallway, leaving the King of England completely isolated in the oppressive silence. He could not recall how he exited the room. Subsequently, while seated by the window of his frigid, dimly lit apartment, he gazed vacantly into the London night. Her comments reverberated incessantly, undermining the fundamental pillars of his existence. He was tormented not just by betrayal, but by the unsettling awareness that his profound love story may have been a fabrication from the first. A familial schism. The turmoil at Kensington Palace. In the aftermath of Camilla's devastating revelation, a somber atmosphere enveloped the royal apartments. The king withdrew into a realm of isolated torment, while the affairs of the state continued around him as if in a dreamlike condition. However, the anguish and rage accumulating inside him were solidifying into an uncontainable determination. Her confession not only shattered his heart, but also dismantled the last remnants of his self-control. He convened a crisis conference at Kensington Palace with his two most trusted family members, his oldest son and heir, Prince William, and his loyal sister, the Princess Royal Anne. In the stillness of a drawing room, a fire burned in the fireplace, although its warmth failed to alleviate the frigid tension in the atmosphere. William and Anne, having received only disjointed accounts of the catastrophic meal, sat with expressions of profound anxiety. Charles, his face marked by a profound grief that seemed to have aged him much overnight, clasped his hands and inhaled deeply and deliberately. William, Anne. He continued, his tone subdued but unwavering. I have reached a conclusion. I have resolved to divorce Camilla. The words descended into the room like stones, leaving a quiet that resonated with astonishment. William, always the protector of the monarchy's stability and popular perception, sat up abruptly. Father, divorce. He stuttered, incredulity evident on his face. You cannot be serious. The media and the people would deem it a disaster. Have you considered the constitutional ramifications? The monarchy cannot endure another scandal of this magnitude. His tone was infused with concern, and his thoughts swiftly turned to the possible repercussions for the institution he was meant to head. In contrast, Princess Anne remained completely still. An extended interval elapsed before a slender, frigid grin graced her lips. Divorce, she said, her tone incisive and without emotion. Finally, Charles, you have regained your rationality. She was never suitable for the position. She exploited your commitment. Conclude it. You will get my whole and unequivocal support. Her candid, realistic endorsement starkly contrasted with William's frantic appeal for prudence. Charles shifted his gaze from his son's apprehensive expression to his sister's determined countenance. I have contemplated nothing else, he said, his voice resolute, but laced with a discernible quiver of anguish. She explicitly said that she never really loved me. I cannot exist inside that falsehood. I will not persist in this pretense. The unfiltered emotion in his confession briefly left William speechless. He saw not only a monarch engaging in political strategy, but a parent revealing a real and deep-seated sorrow. I get your anguish, father. I really do, William said, his tone becoming gentler. However, the repercussions will be uncertain. What will the nation perceive? What will Parliament articulate? We have exerted much effort to reconstruct. His hands tightened, his exasperation stemming from an urgent need to save his father and the crown from yet another public disgrace. Anne confronted him abruptly. You are concerned about the throne, William. What concerns you about your father's heart? She has excelled. If he wants to restore his dignity, it is our obligation to support him. She glanced at Charles, her countenance a unique blend of intense devotion and pride. Proceed, Charles. Reclaim your existence. Upon their departure, Charles lingered, gazing into the smoldering remnants of the fire. The next journey assured just isolation and political turmoil. For the first time in weeks, he had a fragment of assurance. There would be no reversal. The Queen's Gambit, a challenge to dethrone the monarchy. The official divorce notification was sent to Queen Camilla's apartments not by the king, but by a royal courier. It was a frigid legal document without any human emotion. For Camilla, a woman who ascended from public pariah to queen consort, the impersonal rejection was the pinnacle of humiliation. The anger that erupted inside her was instantaneous and explosive. So callous Charles, she reportedly said, her voice quivering with indignation, stemming from injured pride. To be quietly dismissed, obliterated at the stroke of a pen by the man for whom she had sacrificed her own reputation, was an affront she would not endure. If Charles desired conflict, she would not remain a silent victim. Without hesitation, she exited her chambers with fervor. Courtiers and assistants recoiled as she advanced, her dignified demeanor fractured her strides, ignited by an unmistakable wrath. She refrained from knocking. She forcefully opened the substantial doors of the king's study, the noise reverberating like a gunshot in the silent corridor. Charles. Her words echoed across the room. The king glanced up from his desk, momentarily shocked before his demeanor reverted to a composed, icy tranquility. "Camilla," he said monotonously, "your presence here is unwarranted." She emitted a harsh, disbelieving laugh and approached his desk, forcefully placing her hands on the smooth wood. "What is my purpose for being here?" she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You have sent a divorce notice to me, as if I were a recalcitrant servant." Silence begets timidity. "Do you really anticipate that I will disappear without protest? Do you see me as expendable?" Charles rose gradually, his knuckles pale as he clutched the back of his chair. "You choose this course, Camilla," he said, his tone subdued, but laden with grief. The remarks impacted her profoundly. She momentarily hesitated, but the brief display of weakness was swiftly replaced by a frigid, analytical gleam in her eyes. Her lips formed a sardonic grin. "You discuss options and deception," she said, her tone descending to a low, threatening pitch that was as sharp as steel. "Listen attentively, Charles. If you expel me, I will not go alone. I will carry all items with me. The mysteries, the clandestine negotiations, the uncomfortable realities that this castle has concealed for decades. The world will ultimately reveal the true secrets of the crown. You will not only lose a spouse, you will lose the throne itself." The imminent menace loomed ominously as to a blade suspended in the atmosphere. Charles became completely still, his eyes widened in a new kind of terror. The lady he had previously loved unconditionally, for whom he had challenged familial and societal norms, now confronted him as his most formidable adversary. She was using the monarchy's concealed transgressions as a weapon poised to dismantle the whole structure around them. "Would you presume to do so?" he said, his voice faltering, not from fear but from the anguish of this ultimate, irrevocable betrayal. Camilla advanced, her stare resolute. "You initiated the conflict, Charles," she said, her tone acrid and conclusive. "You subjected me to humiliation. You attempted to expel me. Do not attempt to portray myself as the antagonist in this narrative. Should I falter, I shall guarantee your descent beside me." She pivoted abruptly and exited the substantial door, shutting behind her with a resonant finality. Charles reclined in his chair, his heart constricted with torment. Her menace included not only secrets, it pertained to the whole obliteration of his heritage. The monarchy he had dedicated his life to safeguarding was now being imprisoned by the lady he had once seen as its deliverance. A gilded cage, the monarch's sacrifice, and the frigid truce. The news of Camilla's incendiary threat rapidly circulated around the upper echelons of the palace, inciting wrath in Prince William. This constituted the paramount infraction for the heir to the throne. Inflicting damage onto his father was one thing, jeopardizing the crown was inexcusable. He burst into his father's study, his face reddened with justifiable indignation. "Father," I overheard her remarks. He said, his tone incisive with incredulity. "She menaced the monarchy. We must not allow her to evade accountability for this. Revoke her titles. Expel her. Action is crucial." Charles, seeming fatigued beyond his age, reached a hand to soothe his son. "William, I comprehend your ire," he said, his tone steady and resolute. "However, we must not allow emotions to define our trajectory. The crown must not seem to act out of anger. However, she has deceived you, betrayed the family." William said, his voice quivering with a blend of fury and profound sadness for his father. "If we remain inactive, she will believe she can indefinitely manipulate us. She poses a threat." The king sighed deeply, his eyes wandering to the overcast London sky. He had restless nights grappling with the harsh reality. Camilla's warning was plausible, and bitter public divorce characterized by a vindictive queen divulging secrets to the media might precipitate a constitutional crisis from which the monarchy may never recover. The institution would be besieged by its adversaries. Ultimately, he faced his son, his gaze reflecting the frigid, unyielding brilliance of a monarch enacting a grievous sacrifice. "I have reached my conclusion," he said. "The divorce will not forward. Camilla will retain her title." William gazed at him, rendered speechless. "Will you let her to remain following everything that has transpired. He first misinterpreted his father's control as weakness. He now understood Charles's steadfast determination in his gaze. This was not forgiveness, a tactical sacrifice, a king sacrificing his emotions to preserve his dominion. Charles forcefully touched his son's shoulder across the room. "I am not doing this for her, William," he whispered. "This is for your advantage, for Louis, Charlotte, and George, for this family and nation's future. We overinvested to watch its collapse. She remains queen, but her power ends today. I'll guarantee it." Camilla received the revised agreement's terms from palace lawyers. Her title residence and formal status would remain. By a secret, legally binding agreement, she would lose all power, have limited access to government papers, and need the king's office's permission to travel. She was intended to be a title queen. Camilla saw the paper alone in her room. Rejection meant full misery and public disgrace. Acceptance meant survival at a terrible cost. She signed the agreement nervously. She won her fight to stay, but she was imprisoned in a gilded cage. A monarchy of shadows gala and covert conflict. The annual Royal Charity Gala started at Buckingham Palace weeks later with flawless orchestration. From the outside, it seemed like royal cohesion. King Charles and Queen Camilla greeted ambassadors and visitors with pleasant smiles and conversation. The fractures were visible beneath the surface to anyone who knew where to look. The void between them was palpable. They took cold photographs with interlaced hands. While inauthentic, their voices resonated in public remarks. Their marriage had become a performance held together only by duty. Prince William watched Camilla with a cold, incomprehensible gaze throughout the glittering assemblage. He accepted his father's decision, but not the woman who started it. He followed her to the wine table after seeing her leave the gathering. "Camilla." He continued, his voice quiet yet penetrating. Her exquisite smile wavered as she turned. Her voice strained. "William," she said. "Refrain from acting," he muttered, approaching that only she could see. "I shall not show clemency like my father. Consider this a break. I promise you will lose everything if you damage him or this family again. He failed, but I will." Camilla gripped her wine-glass stem tighter, her eyes filled with fury and despair. "You resemble him greatly," she replied, seeming calm, maintaining the appearance of control. She turned and left, poised and alone. That evening, when the guests departed, King Charles sat alone at his window, admiring London's darkness. He kept the monarchy. Crown was defended by him. The victory was hollow and the cost enormous. He won the kingdom but lost his peace. Camilla examined her reflection in a silver mirror in her bedroom, a useless queen engulfed in her former splendor. In Buckingham Palace's quiet, vast passageways, the king and queen of the United Kingdom interact yet remain different. Two kings are bound by duty, but estranged by grief and deceit. The throne they both wish to protect remains, but it is barren, a beautiful lone memento of a love story that ended in quiet anguish. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.